Hey everybody, I'm Scott Allen Miller, and today on Sam IT, we're going to cover this one again. JavaScript is not Java. No matter how many times this is said, and no matter how much it seems like we're beating a dead horse, almost every conversation that involves Java or JavaScript involves someone who thinks the two are the same thing and uses them interchangeably. I'm surprised by this, as the two have been separate for decades, and it's one of the most commonly known myths within IT or development spaces. Everybody repeats it. JavaScript is not Java. I'm not sure, I literally am not sure where the confusion comes from, as they have different names and are so broadly different technologies and never have overlapped in any space. Java is a very heavyweight object-oriented programming language that runs on a runtime with a virtual machine. It is the older of the two. It is primarily used and has always primarily been used in the server-side application space, and has been lesser used but did have some notoriety, infamy perhaps, as use as a very poor technology for building desktop GUI applications, the kind you actually install and run on your desktop. JavaScript, on the other hand, arose as a web framework. It was actually written to run inside of web browsers, and as such was an extremely specialized language that had no general purpose applications for a very long time. Now, it is a prototype, not an object-oriented programming language. Even though those two are relatively similar within the ecosystems of programming, they are different. Java is a compiled language. JavaScript is a scripting or non-compiled language, also known as an interpreted language. So they're fundamentally different in almost every way. These are extremely different languages, different paradigms, different core compiled versus non-compiled, virtual machine versus browser, different histories, different companies brought them about. I mean, they are as different as languages get. The one spot where they did overlap a little bit is at some point it was popular to have JavaScript in your browser, and it was also popular to have Java applications delivered through a browser. I can only imagine that maybe somewhere in there people started mixing the two together and couldn't separate them, but they were so wildly different, and you used to work in your browser and always have a checkbox, enable JavaScript, enable Java, as two separate things. You could never work with them and not have worked with them separately. So it's still pretty confusing as to how people got confused, but there you are. It's a common thing for people to be confused, but not as common for everyone to say JavaScript isn't Java. In recent years, JavaScript has taken off while Java has waned. Now, Java waning is a relative sense. It was the dominant programming language for a long time, and it has waned at this point so much that it's still the dominant programming language. It's just not as dominant as it was 10 years ago, but it's still number one. It's been king of the hill for quite some time, and it probably isn't going to go anywhere really soon. JavaScript, however, languished in the backwater of just being used to automate web browsers for a number of years, until relatively recently it was finally broken out of its shell and turned into a far more broadly applicable server-side programming language through the use of the Node.js libraries and the use of the Google V8 JavaScript processing engine. Now, JavaScript is finding a lot of use competing with Java as a completely different type of server-side programming language. But this is extremely recent, so there's no way that the confusion about Java and JavaScript could be in any way related to the fact that they now compete on the server side, and neither of them is so common on the client side, because the commonality, the completely knee-jerk JavaScript is not Java, predates that by at least a decade. JavaScript remains only with any viable use cases as a server-side scripting application language and for use in browser-based automation. And when it's used on the server side, while it is a general-purpose server-side language, it effectively is only used for building web applications. That's its claim to fame. You will never actually find it in use for anything else, even though if you really wanted to, you could do something else with it. Java, however, could build absolutely anything and is every day used for a million different things. Web servers, of course, being a big one, but everything else as well. There are many database servers written in Java. There are non-web application servers and financial applications and all kinds of things that are written in Java, so the expectations are very different. The one thing you don't find from either of them is something that you would install on your desktop that is relegated to languages like C, C++, Python, C#, Visual Basic, and languages like that. Technically, there are ways to do it, but it's not something you're ever going to find, and it's not what they're really useful languages for. So I hope that helps you understand that Java and JavaScript aren't just not the same language, they are in no way related and have been, at best, completely unrelated, and at worst, competitors in the same space. Remember to like and subscribe, put your comments below, and feel free to link this to people who are confused about which is which. You will almost always see Java written as Java. You will almost always see JavaScript written as JS. You will never see JS referred to Java in any way, if that helps. And as always, you can sponsor us on Patreon, and thank you for joining us. Talkadillo is a cloud-hosted or fully managed on-premises IP PBX platform providing businesses with simple and simply affordable voice communications. Visit Talkadillo.com and learn more about how Talkadillo can change how you view your telephones and help to support Sam IT.